have now. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm just letting a lot of people in right now. There's people here. Can you get Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm just going to give some quick instructions for anyone who wants to listen in Spanish. So, para las personas que ya están aquí en el Zoom y quieren empezar a escuchar en español, pueden ir al botón, al globo que dice Interpretation y escoger Spanish y volver al botón y poner Mute Original Audio para solamente escuchar en español. And I just want to thank Sasha, our interpreter, for being here with us today, helping us with our Spanish-speaking participants. And some people are still joining, but I will hand it over to Commissioner Beth Bye to get us started.
Hello, Eloisa. Hello, team. And welcome everybody to our systems work group. We're going to get right into it to take full advantage of the hour. We know people are still joining. We have well over 100 people signed up to give us feedback today. And as we enter, this is our third of 4 work groups that we're going to be presenting on. We're approaching 1,000 folks who've been able to give us feedback, either on meetings like this. On our website, we have a form, and you can just, if you Google OEC Blue Ribbon Panel, you will get right to our website. And I know some of you sent emails, we saved those. And when I was in Norwich, someone handed me a typed list of input that was tremendously helpful. So however you want to give us feedback, we are open to it. And we appreciate your interest. I believe this Blue Ribbon Panel on childcare is a once-in-a-generation chance to improve our childcare system. And today we're talking about the work group that is the systems work group. You will notice there's overlap with some of the things we talked about in equity and access and workforce, but know that what we tried to do here is narrow the focus to systems, making systems work for families, making them work for programs, making them work for communities, and supporting our economy. I just want to make one note, because we know there are all different kinds of providers in Connecticut. Family child care providers, center-based providers, state-funded providers, private for-profits, private nonprofit, church programs, public school programs. There's a lot of types of programs. These systems, as you're listening, may seem focused on OEC programs because those are the things that we have control over, and the OEC-funded systems are heavily focused on in here. That doesn't mean that we don't care about the whole system. And you will see certainly items that are working to support the businesses of our small family childcare providers and center-based programs that don't take care for kids or aren't state funded. But just wanted to point that out. And you are here today to tell us what we're missing, ways that our system can support you better. So please chime in with any missing pieces, things you like, things you dislike. I found one of the greatest things I love about our state of Connecticut is that people let us know what they think in early childhood and across the board, and this is no different. So our agenda today, you're going to get some context from the work group, which I'm giving you now, and you'll get some more oversight from Jill Marini and Cathy Lenihan, who led our work group. And then draft recommendations. And then just like last time, we found it was very effective to go out into breakout rooms where you all can have conversations and build on each other's points on specific topics. So next slide, please. So I was just explaining that we are in phase 3 of 4 work groups. I certainly don't expect that the final report will be written in 4 sections in these 4 topics. This is just the way we're structuring our ideas and your feedback and updating. So probably after we get through funding and costs, our recommendations will look very different because of all the feedback we've received. So we are at systems now, and you can see the topics that we'll be covering around governance, data, state-funded programs, and then how to support program supports program supports for y'all and operations. I do want to say that Lynn Kagan, who's sort of an international expert on early childhood systems, says you can have the best policy and plans, but if you don't have the proper infrastructure, it doesn't matter. And so I see a lot of what this work group has worked so hard on is trying to think about what's the infrastructure that will allow, first of all, people to know what's available, and then to allow communities to make good decisions about what's the best early childhood plan for those communities. So you'll see a heavy emphasis on that here. And sometimes that seems dull and boring. It's more interesting to talk about other topics perhaps, but this is what's undergirding the whole system. So I'm really glad to have, 100 folks signed up to give us feedback. All right, next. This is just another picture of where we are in the process. Many of you were there for our kickoff on workforce in May. We had an April 19th kickoff with the panel. We've had numerous public sharing sessions, and today is a public sharing session. Public sharing session for the systems. Say that 3 times fast. So here we are today. And then obviously I like to stress that this has not been socialized. These are totally preliminary. These are our ideas for you. So we think some of them are really good ideas, and you might not agree, but we're here to bring you those ideas. And this is sort of the beginning of the process with something for you to react to. Next slide. Just really to level set, I'm going to talk about children now, not systems. I think all of us, as we do this work, when you work in early childhood education, you really care about the system. But I think when it comes to making decisions and focus, we've got to keep the child in mind. How do we make sure the child has what they need, understanding that they live in the context of a family? And then you all have incredibly important relationships with families, and you're supporting them. Communities are supporting children and families. And we're so lucky to live in a state like Connecticut, where, we have Governor Lamont, who says he wants to make us the most family-friendly state in the country. And we know that as we're friendly to families, that supports the child. And then we live in the context of a country. So we're going to talk about some of the interfaces with federal systems. So these circles can keep going out. And I am now going to turn it over to Cathy Lenihan. Cathy and Jill Marini, thank you so much for your leadership here. We know this has been complicated and hard to narrow down to the items we're talking about today, but we feel like we've done a good job of bringing the public something that's well thought out to respond to. So Cathy, thanks a lot. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Beth. And this has been a great opportunity for me, for Jill, and for many people at the OEC and in the community who've had this opportunity to look at our system. And this is your opportunity today, as Beth has said, to see what our recommendations are and provide feedback to us. So here's the system work group goal that is guiding our work. And it's to build an equitable, efficient ECE system that is informed by current data and that fosters the sustainable provision of high quality programs and services for young children and their families in Connecticut. This goal is a baseline for the recommendations that we'll be walking through in a moment with you. Next slide. Our current systems ecosystem faces a variety of complex and interrelated issues. You folks are on this call today because you probably could help us identify those. And so as we were looking at our systems ecosystem, we were thinking about the key categories that we wanted to address. And those categories are the funding systems, governance, program enrollment and operations, and data and outcomes. And these components are deeply connected to both to one another and to the work of the other Blue Ribbon Panel work groups. As Beth said, this is our 3rd session, and all of this work we find has some interconnectedness to the other work groups. The following draft recommendations you're about to hear under these categories are preliminary based on current work and promising practices here and across the country. Beth shared a little bit about that. These are preliminary, and we want to get feedback from the public, guidance from our panel, and key stakeholders. Then we will speak, these components will be tested for feasibility and impact. And as you listen, and as you go into the smaller work groups that we're going to have, this session is more than just feedback on what you will see. We really want your thinking about solutions. So as you listen and read, please be thinking about solutions. How can Connecticut address these issues? Not just what we should be addressing. Think about how can we do it as well. So I'm going to walk you through two of these work groups. And as Beth had said, there's been a group of us at OEC and folks from the community and providers who have been participating in drafting these preliminary recommendations. We've been meeting weekly, sometimes twice a week, over the last few months to come up with these recommendations. They aim to address what systems and policy changes will be needed to achieve the work group's goals and sub-goals. Again, what we're presenting today are preliminary. They'll be discussed and updated with the Blue Ribbon panel, and then further socialized with the field before they are considered final. So what you see here is the funding systems, our recommendations for the funding systems. And we have 5 of them here. Consolidate the number of state-funded ECE funding sources from the current state of 5. These include school readiness, child daycare, Smart Start Recovery, State Head Start Supplement, and Care for Kids. Our goal and our recommendation is to think about consolidating those from the existing 5 to 1. The second recommendation is to fund programs by classroom based on blocks of time. So we're thinking of full-time, part-time, school year, aftercare. And again, this will be informed by local community needs. Our third is to deploy unified state funding to programs through the state of Connecticut purchase of service contracts. Those are our POS contracts. We're recommending that rather than the current mix of grants and POS contracts that we currently have. And to distribute payments directly to programs quarterly in advance of service provided. That's not happening currently. With some of ours, they are, and some programs are being reimbursed in arrears. And we are looking to pay directly rather than through contractors or fiscal agents. We're recommending appointing regional ECE governance bodies aligned with the intermediary regional governance structure and governance recommendations. You'll hear about those in a minute, to assess unmet need for high quality ECE by community. And we're thinking of every 3 years and develop an annual plan for local disbursement of state funds allocated to communities in alignment with demonstrated needs and local assets. So really looking to communities who know their families and their children and their services best. And then our last one is to convert the funding structure to reflect the true cost of care rather than market rates. So that is the first of our categories. And if you want, please change the slide to our next, which is governance. And these are draft recommendations again for your consideration today. We have 4 recommendations. Create and fund a cohesive governance system that covers all towns across the state of Connecticut and provides an opportunity for local partnership and collaboration to allocate state funding. Design and fund an intermediary regional governance structure to support local bodies. Create supports at the state level to bolster the capacity of local and regional governance bodies. We understand that it's going to require some support to do some of these recommendations. And lastly, create a common needs assessment with common data collection across local governance bodies. And with that, I am going to turn it to Jill to walk you through the next 2 categories.
Thank you, Cathy. I just want to echo Beth and Cathy's excitement. We've been given an opportunity to come up with solution-based, never done before ideas, building on systems and community partners that we already have. So again, just be thinking about how this can work. Come to us with solutions when we go to the breakout rooms and how we can use the systems and the opportunities we already have and build upon them. Next, I'm going to talk about program enrollment and operations. The first recommendation is to create a unified navigation system that provides a central location for families and providers to access all necessary information for childcare in the state of Connecticut. So it will be a place where families and providers can access the system and utilize information about subsidies, about care for kids, about enrollment, and many different functions within the childcare umbrella. It'll be a central location where everybody will know where to go, and it will be easily navigated for families. The second one is to provide incentive to programs that utilize state systems. For example, the navigation system mentioned above, assessment system, business supports, and care for kids to improve business practices. So taking the things that we already have in place and incentivizing the use of them to strengthen business and stabilize businesses of that early childhood businesses. And the third one is to provide resource and supports for providers informed by provider feedback loops, such as shared service plans and onboarding supports for newly licensed programs. Next slide, please. Our next group is data and outcomes. And again, remember, these are all drafts and we'd love to hear your feedback. The first recommendation is enhance and integrate existing data systems, for example, the Provider 360 portal or the registry, to support the creation of a comprehensive data system for providers that unifies program data entry and invoicing processes for state-funded programs. The second recommendation is streamline processes for family to access childcare information and availability. The third recommendation, collect common needs assessments data from local and regional governance bodies and provide data on the OEC website. The fourth is implement a statewide system to assess Connecticut's children's early learning and development from birth to age 5 that will be linked to the State Department of Education and local kindergarten enrollment processes by leveraging an existing platform. And our final data and outcome recommendation is to create a transparent statewide data dashboard to share aggregate operations data and outcome measures with the field. So providing you with the information that you need to apply for other grants and other areas where you can gain funding and resources. And now I'm going to turn it over to Eloisa.
Thank you, Jill. So now we will go into the breakout rooms. Just as a reminder, Spanish speakers are not going into a breakout room. They're staying in this main room, and everyone else will be broken out into another room. If there are any issues or anything, just let me know and I will get you where you need to be. Here we go.